security easier. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. We're on the MSP Cyber Roundtable here. We've got three friends today. I love it. We got Frank Raimondi from Nodeware, Tish Williams from Token, and Chris Marquez from Ironscales. Thank you for joining us today on this Friday, guys. Frank, welcome back. And Tish and Chris are new to the show, at least here. We were just talking about weekend plans, and we somehow took a left turn into our kids' experiences, and we're all just like, we live through our children these days, I guess. But what's coming up this weekend, guys? You got Tish, you got a dinner party, I know that. But where are you? Is this at a restaurant or someone's hosting?
No. I'm actually, my husband and I bought a new house and gutted it, so I still have no kitchen. And may not for another 6 to 8 weeks. So everything is out to dinner for sure. And but it's a large group, and when we get together, it's like family mayhem. Everybody who's sitting where, who's finding out what happened, and all that stuff. So it's a lot of fun, but it's also like when it's over with.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you don't have dishes to do. There's that.
True.
Well, I've got a Halloween party where there's actual pumpkin carving involved and judging. So there's big prizes to get.
Ooh, we'd like to see yours after you're done.
I'll show you. I do some pretty good carving, so we'll see what I come up with tomorrow.
So my kids are too old for that now. So how do you find an excuse? Do you have grandkids?
There's an adult version of the contest.
Okay. You're committed. You're committed to the Halloween.
Myself. Forget the kids.
So I pulled out of my closet this mural from 1991 that's too macabre to put on a real wall. But it's it's like a 6-foot mural on canvas. It's like a Halloween mural with anyway, I stuck that in my front window, and the traffic today is everyone's stopping, what's going on in there? And of course there's it looks like a pastoral scene, and then you see hanging bodies and stuff. But anyway. Chris, what about you? What do you got?
As I was saying, no hockey this weekend. We got 6 a.m. practices 5 days a week normally, but we got a break this weekend, and probably hang out, maybe go see a little bit of music. I live in Denver, and so Red Rocks has a few concerts going on, and another band I like is playing at this venue called Ophelia's. So may see if the grandparents want to watch the kids for a night, and take the wife out and see if we can have some fun.
I usually catch Red Rocks recordings from afar, and I saw this video clip a year or two ago of this crazy hailstorm.
Oh yeah, I've been in a few hailstorms at Red Rocks in my day. I grew up here, so it's like one of my churches, right? And so I love it there. We spend a lot of time, but I've dealt with some inclement weather at Red Rocks before, for sure.
I've been to Red Rock and I love it. And it was interesting when I went, it was empty, and you could be at the top and make a noise and it would just echo through. It's amazing. Cool. The acoustics, that place.
Yeah.
Natural formation, mostly, in a sense, right?
Yeah, everything but the steps and really what they built inside of it. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to embarrass Frank because we've probably squeezed all the good stories out of him already. You think you got new ones? All right, we'll find an excuse then.
We'll go with the others and we'll see if I come up with something creative.
So here's the prompt, guys. We encounter an awful lot of people that are new to the security world. They've maybe been in engineering a while, and they're taking a left turn into the world of security, or they're coming right out of school and they know they want to be in cyber and they don't really know what that means, but they're studying hard and they're like, okay, how do I move forward in my career? So the story I love to show people is, how did you get into the world of security? Like forget what you're doing exactly right now. How did you arrive there from wherever you started, which is usually, for most of us that have been in security a while, we didn't start out in security because there was no security industry 20 years ago, right? Chris or Tish, who wants to take the torch on that one?
Sure, I'll go. It's really crazy. When I was young, I wanted to be a ballerina, but that didn't work out. So then it was going to be a teacher, and then I decided, no, that wasn't it. So I was had a young family, just working part-time, doing different things, and really a neighbor said, hey, you want a job working in technology? And I said, sure. And I started out with transceivers and converters and all kinds of vampire connectors and things, and then it slowly moved from there. Right, I got some jobs that I was selling, just antivirus, and then of course that went into different things. I went into security awareness training, and just have been around it for a long time. But it's kind of funny; it just fell on my lap. It wasn't like on my radar as a kid, right? Going up, I am a little older, but I wasn't like, oh, I've got to be in IT. That was never the passion. Matter of fact, we didn't have cell phones. I had the old rotary ones, those kind of things, the old-fashioned days.
Oh yeah, my kids don't even know what those are. They're like, "What's that?"
Right. I mean, it's kind of funny to give it to a kid and say, "Here, do something with it," and they're like, "What do I do?" They're like trying to figure out how to push a button. So it was really an interesting time. And my first husband, who remains nameless, right? No, I'm kidding. But he was really into computers. So we had computers in our home. Gosh, I want to say starting at around 1983 when they first came out, so mostly I would play cards, and things. So
that was the number one application.
Yeah. It was like,
and
then it turned into all these years later that I'm still involved, and I love the channel. That's kind of my thing. So yeah. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, so kind of similar, right? I was always in some sort of sales role throughout, after college and in college, and I've lost a job, and
well, wait. Since you're starting out in sales, I think it's important to tell the embarrassing story of the first thing you learned to sell.
I've got a good one on that one.
So first, I think, I don't know if this counts, but it was like selling popcorn and everything at an AMC 24 when I was like 15 years old.
Yeah, that's great.
And then I worked for some retail stores like Hollister and Abercrombie growing up. Don't judge me. But yeah, that's where it started, and then it kind of piggybacked from there. I actually worked for a company called the Rape Assistance and Awareness Program out of college, and where that's really kind of what developed some thick skin, door knocking, collecting donations, getting people yelling at you and slams in your face. And so there was a lot of embarrassing moments there. But,
now I've been noticing a resurgence in in-person like door knocking. It seems to be I don't know if recovering is the right word for it, but it seemed like it was totally dead 5 or 10 years ago, and not anymore. It's like an overcorrection for COVID or something. I don't know.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I noticed the same thing, and I think it's worse now because a lot of us are remote. We work from home, so like that type of stuff during the day. I'm like,
oh yeah, maybe that's one thing. People are in their houses. First of all, that's where you find people. But I think secondly, like we've all been marketed to death in our computers, right? And if you want to have a real personal connection with someone, like knocking on their door seems like the last way to do that, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you what though, sometimes I got caught by someone who had, he had a good pitch. He actually had something that I needed. He didn't force things. I was like, hey, you know what? Let me, happy to help you out, and like we'll talk further. So, it still does work from time to time, but that's how it always has been in that game. I feel like it's, you're gonna get that's sales in general, right? 9 out of 10 slams for the one win. But yeah, it's funny because that parlayed into me being here in software. I joined the software technology ecosystem about a decade ago now, almost 9 years, I think it is actually. But same thing, I'd lost a job. I made a call, and fortunately enough, one of my good friends, Jared Smith, who's with an organization called Rampfield now, he was getting an offer at PAX 8. And our friend from college is Ryan Burton, who,
Oh yeah, we all know Ryan.
runs a vendor program.
That's
there.
funny. The school with Ryan.
Yeah, and so I've got funny stories all from those guys too. We can take that offline now.
Oh, here's some of those. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what's funny is I went in there, had my interview with like Nick Hetty at the time, and basically I didn't know anything about technology or software, but I had sales experience, recommendations, and it took me about 2 weeks before I actually knew what the cloud was. And then this is the funny, embarrassing story, because I was on with a backup provider, a continuity provider, and they were going through their data centers in Las Vegas, their tier 1 data centers, and all the protection and security that's in place there, compliance regulations that they have to follow. And I was like, this is just someone's more secure computer, and not flipped. And then I was off to the races, and luckily PAX 8 was a great place for me to start. We went from 5 vendors to 65 roughly on the line card, from 50 people to about 650 people in just over 3 years. And I was lucky enough to learn, every solution that we brought on one by one, which was security, continuity, productivity, infrastructure a little bit here and there. And so it really kind of set me up for a unique experience in the space.
So you may be, at least today, just because of that recent history, more informed about the space we're about to talk about than the rest of us, just because you've been forced to get up to speed on all these protective products that I know are on that line card.
Yeah,
but
right. Knowledge by experience, I guess. And then I was actually lucky enough to work for a gentleman by the name of Adam Slutskin and Joe Alpat over at Lion Guard, and they do super system integration and
they integrate with everything,
configuration gaps and all the systems that we use to support and secure our customers. And that was really eye-opening and really relevant to what we're doing today, because as you know, it's not always about what security tools you have in place. It's how they are configured, which actually matters. So we'll get into that a bit more today.
Yeah, I want to frame things a little bit here. We talk about, so the topic today is proactive tools, right? And just to sort of frame, what does that mean in security parlance, right? These are things you're doing before you're slapped in the face by a problem, right? You're proactively anticipating all the things that could happen and shoring up defenses, going to look for problems, going to look for anomalies before they come in and bite you hard enough that you would be not able to ignore them, right? And if we look at I think different people would probably use different numbers. So I'm going to generalize here. I would love to see if you guys agree. I know that there's data on this. It's my opinion that about 80% of risk needs to be eliminated with proactive approaches. And so, if you do want to eliminate like that 80%, like that big portion of the risk, you have to be proactive. It's not optional. You can't just wait to get bit for the alarms to go off, because that's really the way you deal with the residual risk. But in addition to that, I want to point out that even though that's the way to eliminate 80% of the security risk space, it's not 80% of the cost. It's actually, Pareto's rule, closer to 20% of the cost. So it's super efficient, right, to be proactive. Not only is it the best way to reduce risk, but it's also the cheapest way to reduce risk. Now, it doesn't get you to 100%. You do have to detect anomalies that were missed by your proactive defenses to really get that total risk management. But the proactive parts Very, very important and oftentimes overlooked. How do you guys feel about those like broad? I'm being very general in these numbers.
No,
You guys want to?
I wouldn't argue against them by any stretch. I think there's some environments there might be a higher percentage. Just
I
could
agree.
be.
And likely the smaller the business, it's probably a higher percentage, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we look at our perspective on the key elements of proactivity is knowing what's actually there, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't protect, you can't see, you can't reduce risk of something that somebody brought in, their own printer or their own device and hooked to the corporate network. Hello, does that not mean something to the bad guys out there, right? So, not to mention the amount of vulnerabilities that could be found on that device that's been brought in, right? So it's one thing, just that it's a new connection point that somebody might have access into, but it's also just a lot of devices that the bad guys are looking for. So, and then, Christopher, the big play that, I think it's in that same 80% range, right? The number of exploitations or attacks or whatever are human error, right? They're clicking on this, it's clicking on that email that looked, that's from Chase Bank. Of course it is. I'm click through, right? So that type of thing. And then, again, just in the identity access, I'll just bring Tish into the play with her element and focus, right? Is allowing access into the data, into an application and be fully authenticated. So,
Absolutely. So it's really important, coming from a background of cybersecurity and security awareness training, as an example, it is important for everybody to play a role in security, right? And they have to know their part of it. But, from an MSP, position, as an example, you need to know what staff are actually doing the right thing, not doing the right thing. You got to pay attention to it. So one of the things that's really critical is MFA, right? Multi-factor authentication, right? You've got to be able to figure out a way to be more secure. And one of the things that's really interesting that I'm seeing a lot of is that they talk about using your phone for identification, right? And what ends up happening nowadays is, I believe California is even putting laws into place and other states are picking it up, that if an employee uses their personal phone, then the company has to pay for the phone, right? Because now it's becoming a company device. Theoretically, they could then technically own the phone, right? And you don't know what applications people are putting on their phone. So that's another way that if you, again, don't know, as to your point, what you were talking about, Frank, if what's on there or what they're bringing to the table, there's another threat position, as an example. So having a passwordless type of authentication, having something that is biometrically connected to you, I think is critical. And one of the things that, and I don't know if you attended, Matt and Frank, when we were just recently at ChannelCon, but there was a woman there who was talking a lot about AI. And in today's world, you can now have my face voice, not that it wants to be replicated a lot, but I'm just saying you could, and you won't know it's not me. Right? It's going to be very
attacks, right?
The deep fakes are big. And I just talked to a gentleman yesterday, and he was telling me that they literally have an employee. They did a whole AI face of him, put his phone up, right? And it recognized it and opened the phone.
So I'm not totally uncomfortable doxing one of my partners here because he went out on social media and really was vulnerable in public, but he had the opposite of attack, which was he went into a situation where there was an organization that says, we're really afraid of deepfake attacks. Can you install this piece of software that's going to ensure the security of the communications to make sure that this is not a deepfake attack? And like, it ended up, yeah, Chris is nodding his head like,
mean.
But these are, you have to be vigilant, right?
Yeah.
What does that even mean? What does that even mean, being vigilant, right?
And that's like what Frank said as well. And it's what I talk to partners about on a daily basis, right? It's not it's easy to protect against what we know. it's very hard to protect against what we don't know, whether that's in their inbox, whether that's the applications and authentication methods that they're taking, as Tish said, whether it's, things that are on the endpoint or the user's ability to download and to put things on their own device. And so this is where, I think that when it comes to compliance and a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today, it's not only important from a technology, but the human in the loop standpoint is crucial as well, because as you mentioned, that security awareness training, Tish, the end user awareness is going to play a key role moving forward, because we all know that technology is going to fail. And when it comes down to it, it's the humans on the back end that are going to be the ones responsible partially for protecting their organizations as well.
Yeah. Matt, you're focused on compliance and reporting and all that stuff. I mean, the three of us represent vulnerability management, email security, and biocentric authentication, MFA category. What are there any others that you see kind of as true proactive tools that you want to call out here? We can talk about our stuff all day long.
Yeah, so here's where I sit. I sit in the middle of this space where I'm looking at security standards all day, and depending on which industry, which place in the world, what type of business, there's different things you should be doing to meet what would be considered a best practice. And it's funny, this word industry best practice 10, 15 years ago used to be like, it didn't really have a specific definition. Right? It just said like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. But now there's a real definition, and it's really increasingly difficult these days to say you are following best practice if you are not following an exact standard with a predefined methodology. So where we exist is really helping translate that methodology. So you've got the business requirements out at your end client or your covered organization, and that needs to translate into a destination profile of how much risk does the organization want to retain? What are the industry requirements? What are the contractual requirements? And then you end up with a compliance profile or a compliance framework, right? And then you need to get technical, right? But if you've done that job up front, right, you've justified all actions that the IT team needs to take to meet that level of rigor, right? Rather than the IT team saying, oh, there's this email security feature thing that our current scanner can't do. We need this other scanner that does this other obtuse thing, right? Rather than saying that to your buyer, right? You just say, well, the industry standard has moved and now we need to be here. And because of that, we need to do this list of things. And so where we exist is bringing that all together across all the domains of security. And I'm going to tell you, no matter the company and no matter the regulatory environment or the compliance environment, it's still a bit of a bottomless pit of things you could theoretically do in security. So the true art form is mapping all those theoretical things you could do, not just theoretically, but for that specific organization. Oh, you're using GitHub and MongoDB, and we've got Windows machines and a few Macs, and taking all those ingredients, right, and saying, okay, what do we need to map in all these spaces? How do we need to reconcile that with this security objective we're trying to get to? And then it's a bit of a deep hole in terms of being perfect, but what is a real priority, right? What is a real priority? Where does email scanning that missing feature fit into that overall list? Where does our identity posturing fit into that overall list? How are we doing in data management right now? And really prioritizing and then tying that back to the budget, the investment process, right? So that's where we live, and we get into the business, right? We get into the threat space, we get into the compliance frameworks, which are their own language, right? And then of course we have to tie all of that back to precise technical definitions, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, I have a good example of that, right? I mean, if you look at the different frameworks today and requirements, right? CMMC is the big one, right? Because it's become active and it's all that. But whether it's that or FTC safeguards or NIST 800 or whatever the HIPAA elements, right? All of those come back to go back to an 80% rule, right? Here, if we're doing vulnerability, if you're doing email, if you're doing identification, you're doing MFA, you're doing backup disaster recovery, right? All these proactive tools, right? You're likely going to be 80 to 90% ready for any one of those dozens of
It's
requirements.
true. It's true.
Right.
Most security endpoints share requirements, right?
Yeah.
Most of those industry specific definitions aren't very different than other industries. They each have their little idiosyncrasies.
That last 10 to 15% is very specific to whatever CMMC was requiring, right? Or whatever PCI that's involved in the FTC requirements or whatever, right? So I think that, so the back to the broader discussion here, right? I mean, I think what you're seeing and what you're enabling, the data being pulled in and the data being available to produce the report that does the validation or the attestation to that specific, that customer that needs exactly this.
It's
right?
true. On the technology side, it's very similar technologies across these verticals, but the technologists are not usually the buyers. And if you're in healthcare, you better be able to talk doctor lingo. If you're in a bank, you better be able to talk banker lingo, right?
Mhm.
If you're in a law office, you better be able to talk lawyer, right? And you need to be able to tie specific requirements for their industry back to that technology. And compliance is sort of the Rosetta Stone there of translating business to technology. There's a language for that.
I like that Rosetta Stone of technology.
Yeah.
And Matthew, you said something as well there. It's like it can be a pit, right? It's a whole of what I need to do. And so I think that what we're talking about right now is like, hey, here's the basics to make sure that 90+% is protected. And Frank, what you mentioned, I think with, when it comes to authentication, the user's ability to, download and, to limit their ability to put risk upon themselves and their own organization. Email obviously is the number one attack vector out there still. So that needs to be protected. And then perimeter security, with those, I think that's a solid start for most businesses and most organizations out there, because if you have those four things that limit those high-end risks, you are in that 80 to 90+% range of protected and where you need to be. And then that other 10% can come along with whatever regulations or industries you need to comply with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I'll
try to add to that, Matt. I was just going to
please.
That we were talking about people coming into the industry. This is really a core area where somebody who's new and doesn't quite know where they want to go, they're trying to figure out the technology. Pick one. Pick mail protection, authentication, right? Vulnerability, whatever that is. Really deep dive into it and feel confident in it, because that one piece can actually start to carry you into the next and the next, right? That's exactly
great call out, because they overlap for sure, huh, Tish?
Right. But if you start out and you really kind of focus, you can feel the confidence in yourself by just studying. And they're not, any one of them is not difficult. The difficulty comes in trying to mesh them all together so that they function together and work together. And that's the bigger picture, right? I always say anybody can go down a rabbit hole, but it's the guy or gal that knows how to go down the rabbit holes and come back up, right? Multiple ones. So pick a hole, go in there, figure it out, and then that can build your next step for your career.
I love that advice, Tish. And in particular, I love that because I'm sure you guys all get this question, right? You have someone that's about they're like 22. They just finished their BA in cyber. They're like, I think I want to be a pen tester. And you're like, okay, how do I tell this guy that he's never going to be able to compete with really great pen testers someplace on the other side of the planet, right? But there are areas where actually you can bring a lot of value to the table, right? And what it requires is getting good at something, right? There's like, pick a domain, any domain, and learn it, right? And however you want to get there, there's different ways of learning that stuff, right? You can dive in with a vendor, you can read books. There's you can set up labs, right? There's a lot of
Or
ways.
do all three. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's a good call out too, because it's just you want to not only focus on one thing, but you can also focus on new things, right? Something like pen testing that's already been developed, and like you said, someone else on the other side of the world is going to do a much better job. Research, do your due diligence, see what these distribution partners or these vendor distribution and SaaS distribution partners are bringing onto their line card, because obviously they've probably done their due diligence on who they're bringing in, or find them pre that stage. And so you can start understanding where not only technology is today, but where technology is evolving to, especially with the development and the progress that we've seen within AI and other solutions like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. People ask me all the time, what should I be doing to protect myself in AI security? And my answer is almost always the same, which is adopt a compliance framework. They all deal with AI security. You just need to do all the normal security things, and you're going to be protecting yourself from AI risk. But if you don't know where your data is and you don't know what SaaS applications people are logging into, that means you have no idea what AI they're using. You have no idea what data they're putting into it, right? And so those core...
the SaaS world, right? Just thinking of access to data. I mean, that to me, actually, that's probably the most scary and to a certain degree, untrackable play, right? I mean, if you're using 3 different SaaS applications, Dropbox, just a simple example, right? I mean, the data that's there that, I as an employee have access to and can easily put somewhere else, right? And if you don't, again, kind of what you don't know is what's going to hurt you the most from a proactive or just a general protection standpoint. So, again, knowing what applications people have access to, I don't know if that's really very, very, very well monitored, right? It's probably beyond our core pieces that we've been talking about here. But
to add to that, when they talks about AI, the presentation that I saw recently, it was very interesting that it's really in its infancy, right? So everyone's blown away by everything it's doing, but it's still a baby. And I remember in the lecture they were talking about, if you ask a question of AI and it says, I can't do that, you can say, I believe in you, try again. And it actually will do it. They'll say, okay, I'll give it a try. I'll figure it out.
Oh yeah, those guardrails, Tish, are they're like
loose.
They're not very they're really just guardrails that you can step over, right?
Exactly. It's
not a perimeter wall. It's not a perimeter wall. It's how do we take this hallucinating animal that's totally out of control and keep it going in the right direction so people think it's useful and not a danger to the planet. And it only mostly stays in the lines. I was looking at this puff piece, I think it was earlier this week, of a black bear that broke into a zoo to go visit the other bears. And I'm just thinking, you're never you're never gonna, be able to stop this stuff 100%. What you need is to have, we used to use the term defense in depth, right? To just say you need to have more than just one perimeter. You need to have other toll booths in your organization where you're checking security. But the reality now is that you need to design. We're not in defense in depth anymore. We are now there's no such thing as a perimeter anymore. Everywhere is the perimeter. Your security surfaces are all of IT. And what we need these days is rigor across everything, right? And in a world like that, right, hopefully when people get through the AI guardrail, right, there's another barrier there that stops things from being, worse than they would be otherwise, right?
Yeah, and that's funny that you say perimeter, right? Because what is your definition of a perimeter? I guess, right? Because it can be anywhere. That's where I think compartmentalization also is starting to take a bigger fold in this space too, to be able to, because everything is a perimeter, until restricting access from if one user or one application gets attacked, to limit that reach into the other applications or other systems that individual or that organization is using. And so, yeah, you're exactly right. It's going to continue to evolve too.
We used to be looking at these perimeter places, and we would stop the actual traffic flowing over the network. But how do we know what's good
That used to
traffic
be,
and
yeah,
what's bad
when you had one
traffic?
wire coming into the building, that was okay.
Yeah, well, so now, like Tish's world is really exploding right now, right? Because the identity has become like in 2025, that's really where the rubber hits the road on enforcement, right? Is we no longer have the ability to distinguish the good network traffic, bad network traffic. We have to actually look at the person, right? Is this a real person? Is this person supposed to be doing this thing? Is the machine that they're sitting on like safe? Is like, are we sure? All those things, right? And it
Yeah.
comes down to the person because um, Tish and Chris logging into the same website, maybe Tish is supposed to be in there and Chris is not. It's going to look the same, from the firewall perspective if we're not actually analyzing the identities, right?
Absolutely.
So,
I was just sort of thinking, right, that, especially, we go to a lot of shows, all of us, and, MSPs go to quite a good number of shows. And it's that overwhelming, oh my God, how many vendors are in here? How many products are in here, right? And some of them are duplicative, right? But kind of to your point, your time, Matthew, there's this perimeter. There's so much going there, and maybe we kind of go back to, or I'll just kind of bring it back into the core pieces that to start with, right? Because you can't do it all at once. You're not going to turn it on and say, hey, we're there. I think what the three of us, or the four of us actually, with the collection tool and services you bring, Matt, right? We are the core. You got to start here, right?
Yeah.
There's, whether it's basic cyber hygiene, it's basic proactive tools. What are the elements that we do? And maybe we can go there. Maybe we can just sort of talk briefly, like the category that each of us is in.
I'm gonna I want to spend some time like just touching on each of these domain spaces, and I would love to know like what's your basic pitch? But the second thing I want to hear is what's like sexy and new in your space right now. Like as an example, I'm going to pop your bubble a little bit, Frank, but I'm sure you've got other news you can talk about. 10 years ago, right? We did vulnerability scanning externally, like once a year, once a quarter, or something like that, right?
Yeah,
And then 5 years ago, it was like, oh, we better be scanning everything on the network remotely. And now today, it's actually, you need to be scanning everything everywhere, and not just what you're seeing on the network, but you need to have these persistent agents, right? That are sort of going to follow people home from the office, right? Because they don't even come into the office anymore.
Like everything everywhere all at once.
All right, give us the Nodeware.
All right. So to that point, right, the value of let's call it the category of vulnerability management, right? That really needs to be everything in the network, right? In the devices there. You need to have the agents, right? Because there's a lot of companies that don't have an office at all, right? I've been my company 4+ years. I've been to the office once, right? So my device needs to be contained and managed. And then you have the external access points, right? IP addresses and websites. So Nodeware is truly delivering a continuous vulnerability management program that can see every device on the enterprise wherever it is, right? So we can see it, we can fingerprint it, we can tell you what vulnerabilities are on it. We give it a score so you know the severity of each individual device. And then we give specific remediation tools and recipes within that to fix them, right? And some of them are just patch oriented, that a patch application that an MSP is using could roll it out. We actually also deliver patching in the tool if somebody wants to use it. But at a minimum, right, you need ease of use, right? You need it focused on what we're doing, which is very key deliverable for Nodeware. It's just vulnerability management. We have sister services and a company that does a full-on penetration test, right? That's fingers on keyboard, being the bad guy, but with the white hat, right? Doing what the bad guys do, which is very much a complementary play within the security world to what Nodeware delivers itself. So think of Nodeware as a ongoing, daily, continuous vulnerability tracking and remediation support. And then, that's going to the doctor and getting your physical and telling them what you need to do. Okay, go do this. Penetration test is stepping on that treadmill and getting a real test and seeing if those things you were doing are taking effect, and where are the holes, where are the gaps. So
I wanna add one more thing there, Frank, because I see this all the time. I ask, I'm assessor. I'm like Mr. Assessor, right? I go in there and I ask the hard questions, right? I'm always the bad guy. And I ask people, so are you doing vulnerability scanning? I see on your insurance application, it says that you check the box, so what are you doing about that? And then they come back to me with a story about their really great patch management tool that they're just in love with. And they configured it once and they never looked at it again because it's amazing. And and I say to them, well, what happens if there's not a patch for that vulnerability, man? And you could tell sometimes that it had never occurred to someone that there are problems that vendors don't fix fast enough or don't fix at all, right? Yeah. Or that the vendors did fix and there is a patch, but your patch management software that you're just enamored with just doesn't have that patch. And the reason I'm talking about that scenario is it's very frequent for me to be in a situation to tell people, yes, patch management's great. Thanks. It's good you're doing that. You need to be doing that. But also vulnerability management's a totally different thing. You need something looking over the shoulders of your patching regimen.
Well, and patching, to be honest, patching typically takes place or is driven just to the endpoint, right? To the PC or Mac or maybe the server, right? Don't forget, we've got, there's 2/3, well,
you got all the things, right?
There's other things on that network that have vulnerabilities, that have access to the network. I mean, we see for every endpoint, typically for every endpoint that's on a customer's environment, there's an additional 2 devices to that network. Again, printers, scanners. They have access to the internet, or the internet has access to them. Right, so they all are carrying vulnerabilities. They all have maybe not a patch per se, but they have a fix that has been identified and a security piece. Again, a printer is a great example, right? Printers have lots of open ports. They have lots of access. They have lots of updates that are done or that are published but aren't done that are making them less secure. So
and then we've got the smart bulbs, the tea kettles, the refrigerators.
It's got an IP address, right? We track Roomba vacuums, right? I mean, they come up and they, you can say, okay, I've seen it once, I scored it, I don't need to keep scanning that one, but maybe you do, right? You don't know until you know.
And this is one of those things like what you just said, Frank, about the anything with a port, right there for what you do. And this is one of the big things that we used to analyze when I was at LineGuard and look for, attack surface management and configuration gaps. And a lot of times it's not the customer making the mistake. It's the IT, the MSP or the head of IT that's going in there through port 3389, for instance, to fix a problem. And they leave and they forget to close that back door behind them. And now all of a sudden, they're vulnerable again. And so it's that constant, I think what Matthew was trying to say is it's that constant, you need the patch management, and then you need the vulnerability management looking over the shoulder to make sure that nothing became vulnerable that needs to be fixed again. Because doing it once, you saw me put my hand in my head.
Yeah. Well, and the topper on that, right, is if you're doing it once a month or once a year or a vulnerability, right, how many devices come onto the network every day? I'm bringing my own phone. I'm bringing my own PC. I'm connecting in. Right, we do alerts that can tell the MSP or tell the end user, this device is on here. Do you want this on the network? Right, go deal with it. So.
And worth pointing out, by the way, that this is, and this was not the case just a few years ago. This is now grounds for claim denials on many cyber insurance policies. If you say you're doing the thing and you're just scanning and you're not actually paying attention to it and doing the stuff, you may get your claim denied. That's real.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, Chris, tell us about Ironscales. The brand's been around a little while, so I am embarrassed to say I don't know all the new stuff that's going on.
Yeah. So we're actually ahead of the curve, so to speak. We are an adaptive AI-powered email security and security awareness training solution that integrates directly with Microsoft and Google in a matter of minutes. And so because of our AI technology and our ability to look beyond what legacy threats are, threats are evolving. Historically, email security solutions that are out there, even the ones native within Microsoft and Google, they're comparing everything against a known threat database. As you know, a lot of the threats that we see today are unknown. There's zero-day attacks, impersonation attempts, account takeovers, because they're not having that authentication in place prior, right? And so with us, we have the ability to identify malicious intent. We can identify suspicious language like, hey, my friend Christopher from Ironscales, he would never ask me to wire him money or to change our banking information. Mm-hmm. And business email compromise is probably the biggest thing that we see out there that lead to account takeovers because of lack of authentication, that then lead to a malicious actor having access to send out any malicious email unscrutinized to any users that they're on a trusted sender or an allow list for. And so with Ironscales, we have the ability to identify malicious content and malicious intent, which is huge. And then what's kind of sexy is, instead of just depending on technology, is we are depending on, and we integrate human in the loop. We have human insights that we integrate to the AI. We have the largest crowdsourced threat intelligence community out there for an email security company. We take the millions and millions of users that we secure and support every day. They can report an email from our platform if it gets through, and it automatically comes up to us for further evaluation again. And then we can go and use that information to protect the rest of the community. And so not only does a user have the ability to protect their own organization, but any user, any organization within our community has the ability to protect the rest of the community, which is nice. And then the other thing that we're working on, which Tish mentioned at GTIA, is deepfake. So we're all on Teams. We're all on meetings every day. We are working, and we have launched our first iteration of our deepfake protection for Teams, where we can start to identify those things. Like, this isn't my friend Tish. This isn't her face.
I want to point out, so a couple of things there, Chris. First of all, we do have the ability in the world technologically to detect deepfakes. It's not that we can't detect them, right? There's actually fairly reliable methods for doing so.
Yep.
Right? It's really exciting to see that your organization has taken that theory and productized it, actually. And I think that we're going to see, I think in the next few years, we're going to see that creeping into the standards, and it's going to become a requirement to make sure that you have that types of comms analysis in real-time video in the same way that you do for email content, right? Yep. I think that we're going to see that evolution. That's really exciting. The other thing I want to point out that you just talked about, and I just want to emphasize and underline, right? A few years ago, it was not necessarily the focus to look at those anomalies, right? We had these signature databases, right? Yep. For threats, for the ways to detect specific attack patterns that were mechanized. However, cybercrime being what it is, a business these days they have their own release schedules and all that. People may not realize that it takes 3, 5, 10 days from a new malware hitting an organization that catches it, recognizes it, finds the undetectable. They're like, hey, we found a live one. And they send it off to get detected, right, or analyzed. It takes like a week or two to get that into everyone's threat databases so that you can detect it at scale. And so, a lot of these really smart crime, I'm not going to call them gangs. They're businesses, right? These organizations, they just make sure their release schedule is once a week. And I would not be surprised to see that once a week release schedule, with AI being the way it is now, get shrunk down to every 2 days, every 3 days, and those sort of pre-cooked threat signature databases are going to be totally useless. And so that emphasis you have on the anomaly, right? That really is the front line right now.
Yeah,
And
it is, right? Because instead of depending on that known threat database, we have those when they come in, just in case it was a duplicate threat that week later once it's in the known threat databases. But understanding what's contextually wrong with anything on any security side of the house. For us, it's, we look at SPF, DMARC, IP analysis, host region. Have we ever communicated with this sender before? Right? Is this an impersonation attempt? Suspicious language? All of these things play a key role in the ability to protect organizations against these advanced 2.0 and now 3.0 attacks when it comes to, deepfake. And the other thing that you mentioned as well is grounds for your not being for your claim not being submitted or your claim not going through. And security awareness training is one of those things that we integrate to our platform. It's not a bolt on. And so that's what I've been seeing a lot of is it used to be only a checkbox, only that requirement in a compliant regulated industry, but now it's moving over to insurance and cyber insurance. And I'm sure you know more than me about this, Matthew, but I would predict that here in the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be a standard that every organization is showing that they're training their users on a regular basis.
Well, I've already seen it creep into the long forms because it used to be just a question that we see, hey, are you doing awareness training? But now the questions have gotten a lot more specific in terms of, okay, what are you training people in? Are you training them in this? Are you training them in this? Are you training them? Yes. How often are you training them? If they don't take their training, what are you doing? How do you make sure that they take their training, right? What happens if they just refuse, right? And those questions have become more nuanced in the long forms in ways that they weren't a number of years ago. And I've actually seen it on some of the short forms too. They're drilling down on that. And and the issue is, of course, if you just check the box, but you're not actually doing the thing. When they send the incident responders, they're looking for two things. How can we stop this loss in its track by fighting against the attacker, right? And stopping the attacker. And how can we stop this loss to us in its tracks by finding that you lied on your application?
Or that there was a configuration that you didn't configure properly and that you left this gap open yourself, right?
Yeah.
And then the other last thing too is we've added DMARC management to the portfolio over this past year, which is huge with just the regulations that Microsoft and Google have put in place. And so it's essential to make sure that DMARC, SPF, BIMI, DKIM are all set up in order to ensure mail deliverability and proper business workflows.
Yeah, and DMARC, I think we've come around the curve on that. Not enough organizations by far, but most organizations have put a DMARC record in. But I have not yet seen the movement towards rigor there, where they're actually putting the policy equals reject criteria in effect for DMARC, which because they're scared, because people are worried about losing email. So having that type of that tooling, right, to analyze the DMARC reports is really it's become operationally critical to make sure you have a tool to keep an eye and make sure that you're not missing email that you should be getting.
Exactly. And it's nice because with our system, you can just enter any domain and we'll tell you what their threat report is on everything related to DMARC, SPF, stuff like that. And then the last thing, and I'm going to set Tish up here as well, is our account takeover protection is in place for those that aren't authenticating properly, to where if a malicious actor does harvest those credentials and they gain access to the Microsoft environment, we are able to identify anomalies like impossible travel, brute force attempts to the Active Directory, forwarding rules being put in place. All of these little things we're looking at to understand, hey, this isn't the person that we normally know that's logging in here. There's something going on. And we give the ability to lock down and remediate and kick the user out of all active sessions from our system itself. But I would rather they go with, Tish's mindset and protect.
I love all that proactive anomaly detection, Chris, because that's in contrast to let's wait until they break in and then steal all of our stuff, and then the red flag goes off. That type of anomaly.
Exactly. That's more that right of boom, right?
I love the left of boom anomaly detection. Tish, tell us about Token.
All right. Well, first off, so that email for $2,000 in gift cards, did it really not come from you, Chris? Just kidding. So yeah. So we go through it. So thank you. So, coming from a cybersecurity awareness trading background for a long time, which I do think has made a huge impact. Although there's weaknesses in it, like we've been talking about, there's holes and things you got to, change. So really looking around, I found this company called Token, and I am beyond thrilled because I think it is kind of that missing piece that I don't really see anywhere else. There are some that are very similar to what we do, but they don't do exactly what we do. So really, I will say it's the shortest demo on earth. But basically, I would tap once to turn it on.
Yep. Oh, I love she's got a gadget.
And then turn once again, and now I'm logged into everything. That 2 to 3 seconds is all it takes to log in. There are no more passwords. So it's passwordless. It is also Bluetooth and NFC enabled, so you can connect to it that way. It is also FIDO. So anything FIDO, it connects to. So we have a full list of integrations, from Duo to Okta to AWS, Microsoft, Mac.
Tish, to clarify there, by FIDO, this is a passkey as well?
Yes, correct. That's exactly right.
So that's, I think, us geeks, like we hear FIDO, but I think most people, see the passkey label on things, right?
Correct. Thank you for clarifying that. Exactly. So knowing that anything that, is FIDO compliant, we absolutely work with. But I think the beauty of it is, and I know it sounds funny, but it's also the cool factor. I can't even tell you. I told my boss the other day, we were talking about something, and I said, it's the cool factor. And everyone's like, yeah, sure. He gets on a couple calls with me, and every single time I don't say a word, they go, man, that is really cool. And he goes, oh my gosh, you're right. Because let's just say you're an executive traveling. You open up your laptop, 2 taps, I'm logged into everything. I don't have to remember passwords. The passwords aren't at the back of my keyboard, if you can see that right there. Sometimes.
No, we've got some special security there stopping that.
Yeah, probably.
You're welcome. I uploaded our deepfake protection.
Oh my gosh. I did that for fun one time in a meeting. People started laughing, and I said, it's true. I don't care how many times you tell people don't do it. You can train them on it. You can tell them not to do it. And they still say, well, but nobody's going to look at my keyboard, right? This is my privacy. So this is really, to me, a game changer. And being that it's biometric, it is absolutely connected to me. So with the AI world, and I think I mentioned earlier, I can't remember if I said it pre-call or during the call, but the idea that you can actually have an image, you could take an AI image of myself, and what they've done is they've shown you can put your phone right up to it, and it will open and turn on from the AI image.
Yeah.
So really, when you start thinking, that's really scary, but biometrically, it's me. There's nobody but me.
So there's a print scanner right in there.
Yeah, right here, you take your fingerprint and it goes right to.
That's super sexy, I have to say, as a security guy. I love that thing.
That's going to be our prize, Matthew, for attending today. Tish is going to send us all one here.
That's what I thought. I was like, is mine in the mail yet? I could really do this.
My boss is listening
all the time.
My boss is listening. He's like, if they can pay for it, I can get it to you at a good price.
Mailing only.
Yeah, they're very, very cost effective. Here's the other thing. It's upgradable. I don't know anybody else is doing that. It's upgradable, the free upgrade. So theoretically, this could last years, 2-3 years or more, as long as you don't crush it under a car like some people do with their phone. But
yeah, I gotta say, I was a little bit of a passkey wet blanket when that technology first started circulating, because there's some things that aren't perfect, but let me tell you what, passwords are not perfect by far. And I really love the way users react to that environment of having that type of physical token device. It's just so easy. I think when most people think of MFA, they think, oh, that annoying thing I have to do, right?
Open your phone.
So to take security and make it not annoying, right, and make it cool, it actually changes user behavior in a way that's it changes your whole organizational security posture, right?
Yeah.
So.
And you don't have to connect it to your phone. It literally is just on your computer. Tap, you're into everything. You don't have to remember passwords. You don't have to do, if you're an MSP, You don't have to keep resetting passwords. Wow. Tell me how much time you would save on that, right? So it's really the cutting edge. We're very excited about it. Like I say, I can't talk enough about it, but I will say I am on LinkedIn. And if you find me, ping me, and I'm happy to go into a little bit more detail. My demos typically take 30 minutes, and most of it's just talking, getting to know you, because the demo, as you saw, is 3 seconds. So it doesn't really take very long to show. But I would love to connect with anyone out there. And, even Chris and Frank, even though we're good colleagues, hey, we've got opportunities. We'd love to work with you guys too.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tish. And, while you're at it, the one thing that we can do at Ironscales as well is we can be set up in 3 minutes. So it's quick, like Tish said, and we can run what's called the 90-day scan back or email health check on any environment in silent mode. So there's no disruption in the ecosystem. They don't know we're there, but we will pull back a report that shows everything that we would have caught that the existing solution misses, and then provide real-time threat insights during this free trial period for all of our MSP customers or enterprise level customers. That way they can actually see what's getting through and justify, the need for this type of advanced solution. And I think with the mix of what I'm doing, what we're doing here at Ironscales, what Nodeware is doing, and what Token is doing, it's really setting the foundation for protecting, that left of boom.
Well, guys, we had so much fun here. We're over time. Thank you all for joining. Hopefully we'll find ways to do another one of these. We'll have to find a different topic. That was a cool demo, Tish. I'm a little jealous because
me too.
That click is the fastest demo possible.
Matt.
She's like, I'm in.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining. Feel free to subscribe, anyone who's watching, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, Matt, Frank.
Have a good weekend, everybody.